This is Think Tech Hawaii. Community matters here.
Aloha and good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Pauline Shakmakchin, your host for Outside In. Last Wednesday, like every third Wednesday in January, was opening day at the Hawaiian State Legislature. However, last Wednesday was doubly special because it was also the 125th anniversary of the overthrow of Hawaii's last monarch, Queen Liliuokalani. Here to discuss this with me today, as well as other intrigues at the palace, is Kipin Alva Chu, Executive Director of Iolani Palace. Aloha, Kipin.
Aloha.
Nice to see you again after such a while.
Yes, good to see you too, Pauline.
Brilliant. So, unfortunately, I didn't have a chance to be on the palace grounds the opening day because I was busy preparing for a show here, but you happened to be there as being director of Iolani Palace.
Yes.
So what was it like? What was the atmosphere like during this Onipa'a Kako?
The atmosphere, it was very palpable. I mean, I want to use that word first of all, because it was both tense, but yet at the same time, passionate. So I'm going to say, so there were a lot of competing emotions, but overall, everyone knew why we had gathered, and they were respectful of Iolani Palace, even though the commemoration of this anniversary is not something that's, like say, for the faint of heart. Let's put it that way. There was also a very light blessing from the sky. It was perfect how it began to drizzle right about the time of the flag raising.
Oh, okay. That's very nice. And this happened exactly at 10:45 a.m.
10:45, exactly. Yeah.
And this isn't the first time this event has taken place, right? The first time was in 1993 during the 100th anniversary
Correct.
of the same event.
That's correct.
And just like the 100th anniversary, the 125th had no incidents, no arrests. It was very peaceful.
Yes.
And I heard John Osorio was present to make his speech, but you didn't catch any of the speech that he made, right? You were there.
No, because at the flag raising, it was actually the Royal Order of Kamehameha actually spoke from the front steps. And then I believe Walter Riddy followed them.
Okay, and the actual march for the commemoration started at the Royal Mausoleum, is that right? And then it terminates at Iolani Palace,
Correct.
which is it considered a sort of a sacred place for the native Hawaiians, or just a memory of the overthrow?
Iolani Palace?
Yes.
Yeah. It is considered sacred, and there is a burial site on the grounds.
Right.
Yes.
I didn't know that. I took the royal history course, and I didn't know that, because we visited the grounds as well to learn about the various plants and trees.
Correct.
And the barracks, obviously. But where is the burial site located exactly?
There is a burial mound. It's in the Diamond Head Makai quadrant, so in front of the Kanaina building. So from the palace, if you're looking towards Kauaihao Church, you'll see there are tea leaves in an enclosure, and there's a mound there. That represents where the first mausoleum was built for Kamehameha II and his queen.
That's right.
When they died in London.
That's right. Oh, yes. London's always very important.
Yes.
There are very close connections between British royalty and Hawaiian monarchy.
Correct.
So Iolani Palace is the only working royal palace, or used to be the only working royal palace in all of the United States. So Honolulu is quite special it has that distinction as being the only U.S. city with a working royal palace in the past, because it wasn't only the seat of the Hawaiian monarchs. For a little while, it was also the legislature. That's where the legislatures met temporarily before the Capitol building was built.
Actually, it was the legislative building for a long time.
Oh, right.
Yeah, not a short time. Yeah. So what we tell people, because there are royal palaces in other cities in the U.S. that are called royal palaces, but Iolani Palace is the only one that served as an official royal residence, similar to the White House.
Okay.
So that's the difference.
And they even had, the telephone was working before the White House, is that right?
I don't know about telephone, but electricity for sure,
yes.
4 years before the White House.
Okay, so advanced in many respects at that time.
Oh, yes, yes.
Maybe not so much now. So, that's good that you were able to soak up the atmosphere there. It's a very rare event.
Yes.
But just because it's not a major anniversary like the 125th, that means next year they will do a similar commemoration, or it's only on the big anniversaries, such as the next one coming up,
Yeah.
which might be the 150th?
Right, correct.
So, okay.
Yeah, it's usually on the big anniversary dates.
I see. Okay,
Yeah.
so they make the biggest event possible out of
Mhm,
it. So,
correct.
and then they carry the portraits of Liliuokalani, is that
Yes,
correct?
yes,
And they
yeah.
left a lot of flower arrangements and leis at the base of her statue.
Yes, and
yes.
ho'okupu. Yeah, a
Yeah.
lot of times you'll see that. in
Yeah,
tea
because
leaves, yeah.
there's always something left
Yeah.
for her there, but even
Mhm.
more so.
Correct.
So, okay, let's just get into a little bit about the other happenings at
Okay,
the palace. Not
sure.
necessarily intrigue,
Yeah.
but other happenings at the palace. Because
Sure.
one of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is because even locals, people who live here, they haven't visited the palace, which I find a
Yes.
little bit odd.
Yes.
Because as I was speaking with you earlier, what I do, I love to travel. And the first thing I do, because I love history, I think it's the best way to understand a local area or a new place, is to go to the local palace or the castle. It's kind of the base.
Right.
Because a lot of cultures were feudal. They did have kings and queens. They did have monarchs.
Yeah.
And Hawaii is a very good example. In fact, the only true example of that in the American states. So the first thing I'd personally like to do is go to the local palace or the castle and the attached museum. But I'm really surprised and shocked when people here haven't done that, and they have families here. And I said, you know, there's something called Kama'aina Sunday that people can go to at the Iolani Palace, and it's very people friendly. People can bring their children.
Yeah.
So, what are the various ways people can visit Iolani Palace, whether they're visitors or they're locals?
Sure. Okay, so speaking about locals first, because you are exactly right. We are trying to bring more locals in because so many of our residents have never been there, and it's shocking and sad at the same time. So what we tell people is, Kama'aina Sunday. We have it. It's usually the second Sunday of the month, free for all local residents as well as military, and we also do special events throughout the year. So in September, we have this birthday celebration for Queen Liliuokalani called Onipa'a. And so the palace is open free even to tourists during that time. We just open the palace up. It's like an open house. You can go to our website, and we have the calendar in there. It shows when the Kama'aina Sundays are and when these other special events occur. Yeah.
And you also have these quilting classes, is that correct? Are you still running those?
Those are run separately, but they are
Okay.
on
the grounds, on the
correct.
grounds of the
Yes.
palace.
Yes.
And I mentioned this in one of the other shows on Outside In, was I took the Royal History course,
Yes.
and I think people are under the misconception that this is solely for people who want to become docents or
No,
volunteer
yeah.
guides for the palace. And I was just interested in the information because I love
Yeah.
history. So people can take that course with Zita, and they don't necessarily have to become a docent, or that
No.
doesn't necessarily have to be their ultimate aim or
Not at all.
objective. But if they
Not
do
at all.
want to become docents, how can they do that at the palace with Zita?
Oh, we actually have a docent training course.
Okay.
So, and that's actually just starting up. It's a 7-week process. And so they're going to go through and learn actually what it is like to lead a tour for people. And then after that, they're going to take the World History course.
Oh, okay.
So
So it's
those are
developed
separate.
since I've
Yes,
taken it.
yes,
Okay,
yes.
yes, because I took it several years
Yeah.
ago, and it was literally just the 4 sessions with Zita.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it was a lovely group of people.
Yeah.
And it was a mixture of people who just moved to Hawaii.
Yes.
Their husband was posted there. So it was
Yeah.
by and large, a group of ladies. And people who are just interested in some place they've lived for so long and didn't really know the
Yes.
intrigue of the history
Right.
of such a beautiful building. And how would you because you're the executive director of the structure, so there are different descriptions of the architectural style of Iolani Palace. Some people say it's Florentine or American Florentine or Italianate. What is the proper architectural term for it? Because I've seen a few of them listed. Yeah.
okay.
I think in the
Yeah.
Wikipedia it says Italianate, but I think it's more appropriate to say American Florentine.
Yeah, well, the thing is, American Florentine, nobody really knows what that means.
Yes, that's true.
That was invented.
I don't think most people know what Italianate means.
Well, they're thinking Italian, yeah. It's actually, the best description is French Second Empire.
Okay, that's a new
Yes.
one. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
And why is that? What features distinguish it as French Second Empire?
Because that style is also known as the mansard style, and mansard is the term for attic. in French and Italian, and it's the use of the attic as a living or working space. And so if you're looking at the palace, you can clearly see in our towers, the roof, there's a window that comes out. So we have spaces built in, and that's one of the features. Another one is the veranda. That the door to the entrance of the palace is clearly marked. So you can see that's another feature of it. This style of architecture is very common in Washington, D.C. And the building that's the best example is the old executive office building where the majority of the White House staff work.
Oh, okay.
So Iolani Palace is very similar in style.
Okay. Okay, a seat of power.
Yes.
So when I took the course a few years ago, you had, obviously Onipa'a Kako did not have any incidents, nothing violent happened. But I think it was in February a few years ago, you did have one very serious incident with two individuals who broke one of the doors.
It was just one individual.
It was one individual. Okay, I thought they had an accomplice, but it was just one person who.
It was just one person.
Okay, and I think it's been repaired by now. It was repaired quite quickly, wasn't it?
Yes. Well, we had plywood up, and then plywood looks pretty ugly, and so we've now replaced that with plexiglass. Which actually it mimics the glass with the design.
Oh, okay. Thank heavens, because otherwise it'd be really expensive.
No, but we are going to replace. We're getting glass. The glass is going to come from Germany. We have an artist in California. He's going to do the acid etching, but that takes a long time.
I see. So you'll have to keep us informed
I will.
whenever that's done.
Yeah.
Now, some of the other special events in terms of entrance or viewing the palace occurs in December, and that has to do with Queen Kapi'olani's birthday.
Correct.
So her birthday was December 31st, 1834. And you have two exclusive, very special evenings where individuals can tour the palace in the evening and actually walk up that beautiful koa staircase, right? So did you have a lot of people this past December?
We had the most ever. We actually added a third night.
Oh, good. Okay, things are improving, Kippen. The third night. Okay, wonderful. We're getting there.
Yes, the demand is just outstripping our ability to have it open.
Is that for security reasons because it's dark, or is it more logistics to get people to staff to stay on later?
It's hard for the staff to work at night because we're also open during the day.
Yes.
And we don't take on additional staff during this period. So people are going through overtime. Also for the entertainment, because we do have entertainment on those evenings, and to book entertainment for 3 successive nights is not easy.
And this is very special entertainment, isn't it? Somebody dresses up like Queen Kapi'olani, and there's opera, there's music, and a lot of that kind of festivity.
Correct,
so it's not the normal tour where they just sort of take you around.
No, it's
tell you to visit the shop.
It's geared towards the history of Queen Kapi'olani in particular.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are one of the docents dressed up like her, or is it a special person who's trained to sort of mimic her style or something like that?
Well, we have a policy where we don't imitate anyone of the monarchy.
I see. Okay. Is that considered rude or?
It could be taken as inappropriate, so we don't. But we did have Debbie Nakanalua Richards wear the replica gown.
Oh, okay.
And so this year she wore the peacock
Lucky lady.
gown.
Oh, the peacock gown. That's very pretty.
Yes,
yeah.
it was beautiful. And these are gowns done by Iris Villacrucis, designer in Hilo. And they're just beautiful pieces. And so
the reason I was asking that, it's obviously different in Hawaiian culture because I spent a lot of time in Kyoto as a Visit Kyoto ambassador, and they have many matsuri to commemorate historical events in the city of Kyoto because it was the capital of Japan for over 1,000 years. And the local residents all dress up like famous characters in Japanese history. So you'll have the local, very famous merchant who has a kimono shop, and he'll dress up like one of the famous shogun. That's why I was asking about that. But it's obviously very different here. It's a more solemn, it's taken very seriously, and it's not considered a thing to be trifled with.
Right.
So these are called moonlight tours of Iolani Palace.
Evening.
Oh, evening.
Okay.
I thought I saw in the email said moonlight tours.
Well, there is moonlight too.
Yes, the moonlight, if the moon happens to be out that evening.
Yes.
So, and it's only now 3 nights. You're going to continue the third night this
We
year?
we hope to do 3 nights again next year. Yes.
And
I mean this year.
who are the people who seem to know about these? Are they more local residents, or are they the visitors that catch on to these exclusive, more special nights?
Here's the thing we found out is primarily locals who book for these tours.
Because
Yeah.
they've already, probably on a school trip, have seen the normal palace
Yes,
tour.
yes, yeah.
Okay. And I noticed in your email, because people can sign up for a newsletter from the palace, is that correct? To receive communication
Right.
on special events. Now, I was abroad at the time, and you had a fashion show during the autumn, is that correct? There was a fashion
yes.
show? Yes, you forgot about that.
No.
Such a long time ago.
We have so many things going.
Yes. So I noted that there was a fashion show. I said, oh, I wish I could go see that.
Yes,
And could you tell us a little bit about that?
Sure. The designer was Kini Zamora.
Oh, yes, we know him. He's been on Think Tech, I think, yes.
And it was very serendipitous how this came about. It's our director of development happened to be in New York City the same time he was, and they shared a taxi ride from the airport.
Oh, okay.
And in that taxi ride, there was a discussion where he said, you know, I've always had an idea of doing a fashion show or launching my line at the palace grounds.
Oh.
And of course, then she's like, you know, we've been thinking about something like this. And from that's how it
That's how it
happened.
happens.
Yeah,
Always accidents and
exactly.
serendipity, coincidence.
Yeah.
And was it open to the public, or the people had to purchase tickets for that? It was
Purchase
kind of like a
tickets.
VIP event,
Yes.
right? Okay.
Correct.
And what kind of fashion was on display? Was it more traditional, monarchical style clothes, or it was his own
No.
designs, his kind of own avant-garde?
It was
modern
own
design?
designs based off of the palaka
Oh,
design.
I see.
Yes.
Okay, that was
Yeah.
something. And there are
It-
photos of this on the palace website. Perhaps people can take a look at.
There is, yeah, and as well as on Kini Zamora's website as well.
Okay,
Yeah.
brilliant. And
Yeah.
also, in addition to the course and these special
Mm-hmm.
events, you also have some other little projects going on in terms of the museum.
Yes.
So what's going on with the museum? Because this is kind of the last part of the tour. As people, after they finish viewing the kitchens, I think, then they get
Yes.
sent to the museum area where the
Oh,
beautiful jewelry is kept,
yes,
the
yes.
butterfly, the famous butterfly brooch and all
Right.
that.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So we're working on restoring the rest of the basement galleries. So it's only about half done since 2001, and we've never been able to do the rest until now, where we have the designs in place. So these are going to be new exhibits. We're going to be expanding the story of the monarchy. So the King Kalakaua went around the world, the first monarch to do so. There's going to be a gallery about that, Hawaii and the world, and our relationships with other countries.
Okay.
Yeah, that's
Well,
one of them.
We'll get into a little bit
Okay.
more of the ed tech things going on in the palace, but we're just
Okay.
going to take this really quick break,
right.
Kippen, and we'll be right back.
Okay.
This is Think Tech Hawaii, raising public awareness.
Some say scuba divers are the poor man's astronaut. At DiveHeart, we believe that to be true. We say forget the moon. DiveHeart can help children, adults, and veterans of all abilities escape gravity right here on Earth. Search diveheart.org and imagine the possibilities in your life.
Planning all week for the day of the big game. Watching at home just doesn't feel the same. Number one on the list is who's gonna drive. It's nice to know you're gonna get home alive. Plan for fun and responsibility. Choose the DD, captain of our team. It's the DD.
For every game day, assign a designated driver.
Aloha, everyone. Welcome back. We're here speaking with Kippen de Alva Chu, who's Executive Director of Iolani Palace. And Kippen, we were just before the break talking about the activities that people can engage in the museum section of the palace.
Yes.
So what else do you have planned for the future in terms of educational technology for children to play with in the museum and things like that?
Sure. Okay. So part of this, the gallery renovation is going to include interactive displays. I'm not sure exactly how that's going to come about, but some of the things we've talked about is, okay, if Kalakaua went around the world, how do you educate a child in that sense of how long it took? So either it's a globe or even a touch screen. How many days did it take to get from one place to another, and how did the king do this, and who did he visit? So that's one of the things we want to look at. There are also going to be touch tables to introduce people to Hawaiian language. So
Great,
especially for
yes.
the amount of tourists that we get, right? They can see, they can type up a word on a big table screen, and it'll come up in Hawaiian, and it'll pronounce it for them as well.
And you're going to continue to have that, the initial start of the tour seats everybody in a gallery with a video. Is that right? It's kind of across the gift shop. Are you going to keep that?
We are not sure, yeah, because we will most likely move the ticketing to the palace itself rather than at the barracks.
Oh, yes.
Because people keep getting lost.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
Yes, I did hear some people walking around.
Yes.
There was one, they were from Oceania, we'll say. And one of the friends was telling her friend, oh, that's the palace, but they were pointing at the barracks.
Yes.
And it's more the beautiful building behind the barracks that is the actual palace.
Right,
So I think there's a
right.
confusion there, and then there's the
Yes.
bandstand,
Yes,
which is also
yeah.
very important
Correct.
for ceremonial purposes.
Yes.
So, and also, is it difficult for people to park in the area? Do you think that's why people avoid going to the palace?
Possibly, yes, for
Yeah.
local residents. It is. There's only a limited amount of parking, and a lot of times the legislature is using it. I mean,
Oh, right.
because it's in session right now. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't they have their own sort of underground parking? Is that
Yes,
correct?
but they've been taking away the public parking slowly.
Oh, I see. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's rather unfortunate. So
Yeah.
maybe that's something that puts people off. But it
Right.
is really worth it to see if people have a chance
Yeah.
to visit it. The other thing we were discussing was we have the monarchical crowns, because as a king and queen, you
Yes.
can't be a king and queen without a crown.
Right.
So you have, it's David Kalakawa's and Queen Kapiolani's crowns.
Correct.
And you have this plan to perhaps restore the crowns to their former glory. Is that because there are stones missing in them, or do you just want to do to make it as perfect as possible? I don't know how
Okay.
they look now. You just sent me a
Yeah.
few photographs of it.
Right,
So
right, yeah.
what's the issue with the crowns? How do they look now, and how do you want them to look in terms of restoring them?
Okay. So right now, they look to an untrained eye. They look fine and also equal. The thing is, the king's crown.
Yeah.
It was stolen shortly after the overthrow, and so the stones in it, there's basically glass. It's not the actual stones,
Oh, dear.
original
Yes.
gemstones, opals, diamonds. Queen Kapiolani's crown is original and it's intact. So that's the difference. So we would want to restore Kalakawa's crown and then perhaps do some conservation treatment, basically clean Kapiolani's crown.
Okay,
Yeah.
so that's a project it's not a priority, and is that largely because perhaps you need financial assistance to do that?
This is
It's a major undertaking, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
So
Yeah.
if people want to help out there, please contact the palace, because I think it's worth having a proper set of monarchical crowns, so to bring full glory to the royal residence. And once, if and when that is completed, where would you display these?
They're
Crowns?
currently displayed in the throne room. In a
Okay,
case.
and you would keep them there?
We'll most
in
likely
its-
keep them there.
Okay,
Yeah.
brilliant. Now, Kippen, we're just gonna, you're interesting because you're in the past and the future. Because not only are you executive director of Iolani Palace, but you're also involved with First Robotics. And the reason I'm bringing this up is that my guest for tomorrow's show on We Like the 1%, we're going to discuss robotics with Michael.
Okay.
And you work on First Robotics together, but in
Yes.
different capacities.
Yes.
So we're going to dive into it in great detail tomorrow morning.
Okay.
But can you just talk about your activities with robotics? Because you remind me of Japan, you know, the old and the new. Nothing really in the
Sure.
present. You're sort of in the past with the monarchy and the royal residence in Iolani Palace. But then you're interested in the future and in robotics. So
Sure.
why are you interested in robotics?
I was actually recruited to join the board of the Friends of Hawaii Robotics. And since joining, I've learned a lot more about robotics. And I find it fascinating because I thought during my time in high school, I would have never been interested in programming a robot. But the fact is that they can do it now. And maybe, if going back in time, that might have changed perhaps my career trajectory.
Oh, it definitely
because-
would have changed mine. Because at the time we were going to university
Right.
or college,
Yeah.
there was no computer, I mean, not as much computer related or technology related, things like AI or robotics.
Oh, no, I was looking at punch cards.
Yes. I know definitely I'd be making robots now because I'd rather employ those than certain people I've had to deal with.
Right. No, and they're doing they're doing an autonomous portion at the competition, and then the one where they're actually manipulating the robot. But it's fascinating to see this happening at this level, And it's also going into the elementary school level as well. It's very exciting. Yeah.
And I'm curious, because of your involvement with robotics, is there an interest in, once they're kind of more humanoid looking, maybe replicate, is it still considered inappropriate to the Hawaiians if you were to make a robotic version, a mannequin of the king and queen? Would that still cross the line a bit, that cultural decency? Or would it be a compliment, because then you can have almost lifelike, you can bring them back to life in a way?
I'm going to say that there would be people who would take offense to it. There would also be others who would say that there's no way you could actually replicate them. And so doing something like this only cheapens their memory. Yeah.
Because what I found interesting, I went to several conferences related to technology and robotics, and what they observed, which it's not the case with me, people actually quite like the robots that kind of have the dots and dashes as a face, as opposed to a full lifelike human-looking person, a realistic person. That seems to disturb humans more.
Yeah.
Where I actually like it if it mimics a person properly.
Okay.
So it's an aesthetic thing, because I find the ones that kind of look cartoonish to be ugly, but the ones that kind of are as polished as possible. I think Sophia or something. She's the honorary robotic citizen of Saudi Arabia, which is interesting because the regime there. But anyway, so I just thought that would be interesting to see what Hawaiians thought of such an idea, because it would enhance the beauty of the displays in the palace, I think. Not necessarily to have them walking and talking or do that. I think that might be disturbing. But to have a sort of a lifelike version in the palace, I don't know if that would be offensive, in your opinion. Or do you have a group of people who think about these things at the palace?
Yeah,
your board of advisors.
Board of directors.
Yeah, board of directors.
It's like wax figures. You know, we could do wax figures, but will we? I can tell you, no.
No, you would definitely wouldn't.
We would not do that. It's a very sensitive issue because having the overthrow anniversary last week, the issue of Hawaii is still unresolved in many ways.
Legally it is, because it's not as though the kingdom is over, it was just sort of annexed, so.
But even that, with the annexation,
Yeah.
right, there's issues on whether that was done according to international law.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I don't know if you know this, but the International Commission of Inquiry was supposed to have met last week on the palace grounds for 2 days in its fact-finding regarding the Larson versus Hawaiian Kingdom case that was filed in 2000. They postponed for procedural reasons, but they at some point are going to come to Hawaii.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit more about the details of this case? Because not many people are aware of such things outside of Hawaii.
Sure. Actually, one of our board members, Mark Schloff, did a program like this with
Law Across the Sea.
Keanu Sai, Law Across the Sea,
Yes.
regarding this case. Basically, it's a Big Island resident got a number of parking tickets, and he said that the county was not the legal government, that he was still a subject of the Hawaiian Kingdom. So he didn't pay and he didn't abide by the county rules. So he was placed in jail, apparently. So he sued the Hawaiian Kingdom for not protecting his rights.
All right.
Yeah.
That sounds really fascinating, Kippen. Okay, so we'll have to follow this case. And one way we can do you give updates of things like this if people sign up to the Iolani Palace newsletter, or is it something they have to follow independently?
This they would have to follow with the international court.
But everything else is regarding the palace and the museum, they can just go to, is it
IolaniPalace.org?
IolaniPalace.org.
Yep.
And we want as many people, whether you're a visitor or a local, to visit this beautiful structure, amazing feat of architecture. And thank you again so much for being my guest today, Kippen.
Oh, my pleasure.
And I'll see you next Wednesday at 2 p.m. for Outside In. Thank you very much. Aloha.
Aloha.